This is not a sponsored video. What if I told you the game we're exploring today has all 4 elements of Uma Musume, Nikkei Goddess of Victory, Epic 7, and Honkai Star, took them in a blender, and made this absolutely insane gacha with 120 FPS 4K resolution, cinema graphics and music, insane physics, tons of fan service, combat depth, all while being relatively free-to-play friendly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and today I literally forced myself to learn Japanese with the Yandex image translations as well as a couple of them JP tier lists purely for my interest and love for this game. If you guys have been watching my streams or a couple of my social media, you would have probably noticed I was talking about this game for quite a while now, and we are taking a look at none other than one of, if not my most anticipated gacha on March 2026, Star Savior. Again, this is not a sponsored video. I've never been contacted by Studio B-side. I just personally think this game is just that interesting, and I have full freedom and autonomy on what I'm going to be saying. So I'll be breaking down everything from the good and the bad from what I've experienced playing on the JP server. As of this time of recording, it is roughly almost close to 1 week as I've been trying for myself. For a little bit of background credentials, I've been playing well over 100 hours at this time of recording as a complete free-to-play. I went through every single element of gameplay, endgame, team building, the Uma career grind, relics, all while also cross-referencing with JP servers for their guides and tier lists, alongside with my translator to unpack everything I don't understand in hiragana, since kanji is basically Mandarin and I have some idea of what's going on. There will be probably a few things I'm missing here and there, like the niche strategies or the top RTA team comps, since I was just basically distracted by levels alone, but I'm pretty confident I know more than enough to paint you a picture, get it? Paint, of what Star Savior is going to be about. I also intend to make guides for beginners, progressions, career tier lists, so do look out for that in the future in my brand new channel, PokeCorp, where I will be publishing a lot more informational guide content for that channel specifically. This video is purely what Star Savior is going to be, and it's for you to decide if you want to try for yourselves, and frankly, there are quite a lot of things to go through, so let's just jump straight into it. Now, I will immediately address the elephant in the room. Yes, this game was absolutely cooked on their launch. You can find out more about this video over here, but since then, there has been another wave of controversy found in this post over here, if you want to take a look at yourself. So to kind of summarize everything, Star Savior has one of the biggest flops for a launch in both KR and JP, especially so since the competition and audience dynamic over there is much harsher compared to what you see here in, for example, you want to talk about the Owen incident CZN. It had a very bad gacha model, wrong skill description for the rate-up unit, which is Bunny Claire, which the devs then buffed her to make her pretty much broken, extremely slow unit progression, poor device organization with a delayed launch on Steam, grinding being extremely tedious, and one of the biggest tone deaf responses from the devs on a couple of their live streams on KR and JP, which didn't address a lot of their problems. At one point, Star Savior had a rating of as low as 1.2 on the App Store, though this has since moved up to 2.9 as of this time of recording. Now, despite everything, I still went to this game with an open mind because the concept of what Star Savior itself has to offer is just so intriguing to me that I could not give this game a shot. And so I did by getting a JP Steam as well as App Store account, playing this on both devices every single day ever since. Now, the good thing is, ever since their initial launch, the devs have made absolutely insane adjustments to the game, doing things like free sweep tickets for all dailies and arena attempts, increased material drop rates, SSR LD selectors, and free SR tickets, and the craziest one I've pretty much ever seen in any gacha game, which is completely revamping the gacha system from 2.5% SSR to 4% SSR rates. So to say that this game improved is pretty much an understatement. It is a completely different game compared to when it first launched. And this is why I'm also really glad that Global didn't really get the same launch time with KR and JP, because at the end of the day, first impressions matter and frankly can make or break a game's launch. Or even worse, imagine if a similar situation happened to, like, for example, Black Beacon, where they launched a global servers, but unfortunately only, like, for example, the CN side got a compensation. So if for this particular scenario, only JP or KR got selective compensation without global, it would have been a massive disaster that could happen to a gacha game, and I genuinely hope this game does not EOS because it has such a huge potential. So with that out of the way, let's just get into what Star Savior actually is about, and you can judge for yourselves. Hey guys, future PokeViewer, I almost kind of finished recording the video, but this kind of just came out, I think, yesterday. So we have another dev's notes where they basically talk about the adjustments to the game. Some of these things is a little bit hard to grasp exactly what they're going to be tackling, but essentially there are like a couple of like quality of life, for example, sweeping functions to the events. They're going to be increasing like the convenience for the actual journey, buffing certain classes, for example, defender class class because that class has been a little bit weak. Buffing the Nova Burst feature, which is going to be one of the mechanics, a couple of the equipment improvements, direction of the higher tier equipment, the Cosmo Gate, which is basically the Memory of Chaos update, the Arena, as well as the Guild Wars coming out. So TLDR, basically, they have just made another massive patch notes, which is related to my previous point where this game's developers, they are pretty much improving and changing a lot of things almost on like at this point like a weekly basis. So by the time this game actually comes on global, I actually have no idea how it will actually look like. So just something to take note of. Alright, so what exactly is Star Savior? So this is gonna be a 3D turn-based gacha made by Studio B-Side, who are also the same creators of the first game I've ever streamed, Counterside, which personally to me is gonna be one of the most fun gacha I've played in existence, holy glazing, but don't worry about it. The core story for Star Savior is basically that the universe is dying because the stars are dying, and the main focus is our planet La Vista against the Voidborn. So the Voidborn is basically like the evil entities on this planet. They're like ancient Lovecraftian cosmic horror entities, and throughout this entire plot, there is a pretty good amount of fan service. You can show that clip over there. We are basically playing as the captain of the Nebula Observation Agency, or the NOA, a massive city dedicated to monitoring and protecting the remaining stars. You can kind of think of this as the UR Academy in Uma Musume, as our careers will be taking place over here. Now, the big bad boss of the Voidborn will be known as the Void Star, which was then defeated by the Star Savior very long ago and is now making a comeback. So our loops is basically we have a 1-year test to find and train candidates or saviors who can potentially inherit the original Star Savior's legacy and defeat the Void Star again. So this is pretty much like the overall backdrop, and our main story is the captain, so we are the captain, and yep, this is only going to be male, losing our memories, classic, and the main girl Asra, I'm not really sure how they're going to call him Ian, and our party joins us in for an adventure while we train different saviors within a journey in NOA to find the ultimate team of Star Saviors. So that is pretty much what the story is about. The game itself, Star Savior, is fully waifus. There are no husbandos whatsoever, and the graphics can be best described as similar to Uma Musume without the Uma aspect. They are very expressive within the story, gameplay, different poses, interactions, all while having their unique expressions with the captain. They have cute, hot, cool, and everything in between, and the bosses and environment are more futuristic looking, similar to HSR and Nikkei, with encompassing music that will fit each environment between the coziness of the lobby and the battle music in RTA. For me, I would say that this gacha definitely hits the mark as a 2025 going into 2026 gacha game in terms of graphics, music, and sound design, as well as the L2D. Everything has been played in 4K 120 FPS on max settings, so as far as the optimization has been, it has been really smooth on both my PC and mobile, with the PC crashing just a single time so far. So that is pretty much it for the fundamentals of Star Savior. Now, before we get into the progression and how you will go about playing this game, the most important aspect of Star Savior is ultimately the gameplay itself, which is the 3D turn-based combat system. It is not that similar to Honkai Star Rail since it isn't skill point energy based, but way more similar to Epic 7, even down to the soul burn mechanic. So each unit will always start with their S1, S2, and S3, which is basically going to be the basic, skill, as well as ultimate. Though some of these units in the future may have restrictions, like they don't get the ultimate immediately, or if the second skill is like a passive, or that's going to be, but for now, most of them will be following this exact formula. The ultimate and skills used will be depending on the unit. Some will use a skill first for buffs or debuffs, some will just go for the ultimate first for most damage, but almost nobody begins with a basic because it has basically no cooldown. And similar to all turn-based games, your units order are determined by your speed, which then translates into action value, as you can see over here by the percentage. Now, the higher the number, the sooner they are taking a turn, so it's basically the opposite of HSR. And yes, generally speaking, speed is a very important stat, especially in PvP, so it will be a constant for pretty much all of your units. Each unit and enemy will also have their variety of buffs and debuffs, but unlike Honkai Star Rail, where each buff are unique to each characters, as well as you can stack on crit damage buff, attack buff, defense buff, all that kind of stuff, it is very similar to, once again, Epic 7, where a single buff will have a fixed value to everyone, like crit rate being 30%, speed buff being 20%, and defense being 30%, so on and so forth, similar to the debuffs having fixed effects as well. Now, as you are going to be dealing damage to the enemy, not only will you lower their health, they will also have this shield thingy at the side, which is very similar to HSR's break system. This is purely based on an on-hit system, so for example, a single target ultimate is 2, AoE ultimate and skills are 1, and basics are usually 0, but if you're going to be an advantageous element, it'll be +1 to all, but if you're going to be resistant against the element, then there'll be 0 toughness bar damage. I won't talk about this too deeply, but just know that this is going to be crucial for min-maxing, especially the more difficult PvE stages, because by breaking the enemy, not only allows them to take more damage, but it also pushes their action back all the way by 100%. On top of that, breaking also opens up the use of the E7's equivalent of the Guardian, which in this game is going to be called the Nova Burst. The 3 points, the little 3 circles, are represented by 1 break per minion or enemy units in PvP, and for 3 breaks is going to be instant when you get a single elite or boss. This Guardian or Nova Burst, it will differ between what you use, though in the early game you only have this one girl giving a team-wide attack and defense buff, while the 2 other Nova Bursts will be unlocked eventually going forward in the future. So talking about breaking, then this is also gonna be the similar mechanic which is gonna be known as the Nova Burst thingy. That is gonna be the little 4 stars over there, you can see, very similar to Epic 7. Unfortunately for this game, the moment you select Nova Burst, you actually can't undo it, so once you click it, you have to commit. Usually what this does is basically enhance any of your unit's abilities for basic, skill, and ultimate to unlock an additional effect. For most of these effects, I've noticed is basically usually a +1 toughness or shield damage. Some of them has a little bit more effects on top of that, but a +1 toughness bar damage seems to be a constant. Now, I do want to note that for this Nova Burst mechanic, the devs have mentioned that they will buzz this aspect in the future, so maybe after a couple of months, this will be a complete new thing with unlocking like more potentials, so just keep note for that. So that is pretty much how the main gameplay will flow in both PvE and PvP, and the rest will just depend on things like team building, speed tuning like whether your DPS, support, or sustain goes first, who is against what environment, very much similar to any turn-based games where you need to learn your units and teams to tackle the respective challenges. So with all that being established, how exactly are you going to be progressing within Star Savior? Now, as per the intro, yes, it combines the elements of Uma Musume, Nikkei, E7, and HSR to make this career progression / AFK farm-driven turn-based gacha game with RTA PvP. Now, it might look very overwhelming, especially with each individual aspect, and you're probably thinking, okay, there's no way I have enough time to play this game. Uma career with E7 RTA grind, I might as well just take up a full-time job. In reality, this game is actually one of the most time-friendly gachas I've played in 2025, the first still being starsavior because there isn't really any PvP elements. You might think I'm shielding for starsavior at this point. Again, I'm not sponsored, but let me just walk you all through the process and exactly why I actually don't really spend that much time playing this game after a certain level. So the game is going to be split into 3 aspects of progression, all of them taking less than a few minutes to complete unless you want to push for higher results, specifically in the career portion. Now I'll show y'all what this look like, then go into the character progression, so it's going to be easier to follow. Now for all of these content, CP, right, the little combat point over here, the number, it is a pretty important measure of your current team. The moment you are below the required CP, then the enemies will become more durable and deal more damage to you based on a penalty. That being said, it is still very manageable to push above your CP, but the wider this gap is, the bigger the penalty is going to get. So depending on team and setup, you can easily bypass this, but just a mental note if you're wondering why suddenly your same team has a much bigger problem clearing the same content. This is also going to be very similar to the Nikkei AFK farming system. Okay, I figure I'll just show you guys directly from the game itself, so it's going to be a little bit more obvious. The very first portion is going to be the classic system, which is going to be seen from this screen over here. So from the classic system, there's basically the standard dungeon material farms you see in any gacha game, such as your traces, skills, as well as equipment. So for the very first thing you can see in this system, this is going to be for the materials you're going to be using for your ascensions, right? Your materials you're going to be using for your support cards, as well as the materials you're also going to be using for your ascension over here. So notice that the one important thing is you are given these entry tickets for every single one of the classic system, which is you don't really exceed beyond your daily entry. So for example, you can only farm this 3 times a day, and the moment you go below 3 times a day, you have to wait until the books refresh on a daily basis. So you cannot slam like 100 runs on this, unlike a lot of other gacha games, right? The game basically predetermines how many times can you go ahead and farm. Now speaking about farming itself, as you can see over here, you have the sweep function, very similar to starsavior, where all you need to do is just go ahead, click sweep, and it will instantly complete the battle as long as you're able to get yourself the 3-star. So when you get to a higher difficulty, you can unlock this going forward in the future, but dailies just tend to be extremely quickly. For pretty much every single one of these aspects over here, you can just get them done within a couple of seconds, right? So those are going to be the materials needed for your normal ascension. Then the second box over here, these are going to be your relic farming domain. I'll explain how the relic system works a little bit more in the characters, but this is also the exact same as the previous classic farm, but the only difference is basically you can actually go ahead and use your stamina. So for your key stamina here, you only use them in either farming your relics, your gears, or you're going to be using them in your careers, right? Your UMA careers. So for now, I'm not going to do this just yet because we just unlocked the higher difficulty. So you always want to push for the highest difficulty possible. But as you can see over here, we also have the exact same sweep function. So just like the previous first stage, you can instantly clear all of your stamina within 5 seconds, and then it'll be your dailies done for these two over here, right? Then for the third domain over here, this is going to be the one that you need for skill level ups, right? So this thing, you can see I will clear my dailies for this day. You are going to be able to obtain these materials, which as of this time recording, personally, I think this is one of the biggest downside for the game because the skill material economy is going to be a little bit too tight, even though I've only been playing this game for like roughly 1 week. So you just go in for a single entry and try to clear as high as you can, and the higher you clear, the more of these cube will be dropping, which you can then use to upgrade your personal skills for all your units, right? And then for this particular stage itself, it also has a little bit of like a simulated universe, kind of like a roguelike a dungeon chaos tree thingy, where you can unlock a couple of these passive with the points you're going to be getting from clearing this over time. So eventually you'll just get more and more buffs to make it more and more accessible. So these three are going to be the main functions that you're going to be doing your classic farming within Star Savior. This is going to be another endgame content, which I won't really talk about as of now. I'll save this for the endgame portion later. And this is going to be the other one, where there are going to be a couple of events. So as you will play from like CZN or like starsavior or any of these kind of like gacha games, they will always give you this event that's going to be ongoing. Right now, we're having this New Year under Starlit Rails. This brand new event, which is going to be featuring a couple of the challenge stages, but you basically want to just come here and dump your daily entries. So just like the previous system, you cannot dump stamina into this. You can only use up the attempts that the game is going to be giving you on a daily basis, right? Unless you want to buy more, which is only going to be a single time purchase from a shop, which I wouldn't recommend because it consumes that premium currency. Then once you clear your event dailies, you can just use your tokens and just clear out a lot of these shops. Speaking about this event, since it's always going to be a new event coming out, it will be a massive source of income, especially regarding your skill level ups as well as relic upgrade materials. All these other things are just a couple of like AFK stuff as well, like a temple here and there, some gifts. But generally, I would say this would be a very, very important aspect to clear as much as you can, because not only do you get this from the shop, you also have a couple of free passives and as well as like free things that you can just get as you play this game more and more. So, yep, this is pretty much the button which you're going to be using to bring you into the classic farming progression. And then the other one that you'll be taking off is going to be the battle over here. So this is pretty much the AFK, right? The second portion of Star Savior, which is the exact same as Nikkei Goddess of Victory, right? So for this particular mode, you can just get yourself as high as you can in this sector as well as the battle stage, in which you can then get the passive farming resources. So your gold, your books, your materials that will be used for your level every 10 levels, as well as a little bit of this thing about here and there at the end of the day. So if you're familiar with the combat system as Nikkei, then there's not too much to explain over here. For every 5 nodes, you will then upgrade this level 1 time, which will then give you a higher passive drop for all 4 of these materials. So not too deep. Try to push this as high as you can over time, and then eventually, if you do get stuck at every stage, so 13-5, or rather every 5 stages is like a mini boss. If you cannot proceed any further, then you can kind of go back to the other 2 progression to make your units stronger, and then come back and tackle this again with time when you can upgrade your units to a higher level. Now, this is pretty much gonna be the final aspect of progression, which is gonna be seen from this button over here, journey, right? Basically, the Star Savior journey, exact same as your Uma Musume career. And frankly speaking, this particular topic by itself, it deserves a full guide if you guys have ever seen Uma Musume career runs, because it goes in pretty deep. But yes, it is almost exactly, I would say roughly 80-85% like Uma Musume, with some differences. So for a benefit of doubt for those who have pretty much never played, Star Savior's career mode is basically called the journey, where it's kind of like training your apprentice or your student or your disciple to prepare them for the real world out there, and in Star Savior's case, to train them to become a worthy savior to, you know, save the world, right? For the career itself, to actually go for a career, you can see they give you a lot of these career tickets. Now, once you do use up these career tickets, you will then eventually use your stamina to convert back into more career runs right now. As of this current moment, I actually don't use that much time, and you can see I have like literally 68 of these tickets that I just don't use, because the actual composition of making your unit stronger, career matters, but getting a super good save out on the career is not gonna be that big of a difference compared to like a average save out, right? Maybe towards the end game is gonna be mattering a little bit more, but I would say that the actual most important aspect to make your unit stronger is actually the Corrector's relics. So for this one, just getting a good enough save out to go, you don't really have to min-max this by that much, at least from my personal experience, right? So as you can see over here from where my model is blocking, there is an easy mode as well as a hard mode between the 500 max stats for all of your 5 different stats, as well as 150 or 100% for the triggering of your potentials, right? So that's gonna be essentially tied to your support cards. So I don't really exactly remember when do you unlock the hard mode. I think it's after you clear the chapter 3 story, or roughly 8-40, but I might be wrong, but you will not be able to clear this at least within the first 2 days. I unlocked this, I think, around my 3rd day, just for a bit of reference. So between both of the normal as well as the hard mode, just know that it will be considerably harder compared to the 500 points over here, especially in the early game before you gave your units any sort of meaningful upgrades, because you literally just unlocked it. And if you're going to be playing this game for like weeks and months, then the harder mode career will be a lot more manageable. So that is pretty much how this is actually going to be working. So the actual journey itself is going to be split into 3 different portions, as you can see over here, exactly the same as Uma Musume. So you will first select a unit that you actually want to take them into training with right here. So for example, if I want to train my Tanya, I will select my Tanya right now, and then for this particular portion, it is also the exact same as Uma Musume, where you want to equip her with 2 parents, or like her mentor, or like her senior coming from her in the previous generation. If you don't really want to worry about it that much in the early game, you can just press auto and it will equip you with the units over here. Now, very important thing for this portion, which is a little bit different, is that the units you use for your savior in this screen, they will join you in battle during the journey itself, and whoever you pick on the left will always appear first. So you ideally want to select a unit that's gonna be like more synergistic and make your career runs in the actual journey easier rather than harder. So for example, Tanya is kind of like a DPS. So for the second unit, you ideally kind of want to either give her a tank or give her like a sustain, so that your Tanya doesn't really go buff the explode. So another example is if you want to gonna be building another unit, this is gonna be like a support, because she has the action value advanced as well as buffing your allies. Then ideally your first unit should be a main DPS. For example, Lacey over here, right? But don't worry about this for now, but just something to keep in note of. So we're going to go back into the Tanya example. So assuming that you have selected Tanya and you're going to be going to this screen over here, your next screen will then be featuring the support cards exactly the same like Uma Musume. Now, unfortunately for the support cards in this game, it's only going to be limited to 5 slots. Pretty much the same, except that you cannot borrow any friend support cards. At least that is what I have been seeing so far. Maybe they include this in the future and going forward, but for now, you can only use 5 of your own support cards in this particular segment. During the selection of the support cards, you can see that each different support cards, they will have their unique elements, right? So this is going to be for hit rate, then this is going to be for like your power, which is your attack, then this is going to be for health, and this is going to be for like your effect resistance. So you ideally want to select a set of support cards that will fit the unit that you're building. So for example, if Tanya is going to be my DPS, I will want to give them a lot of power cards so that we can increase our power. And if I'm going to be building a tank, likewise, I'll give them HP or defense cards to make them more durable in the final combat itself. So now that you have come to this final stage over here, you can either go ahead and go through the manual progression of the journey. So all the decisions is going to be pretty much done by yourself. You can also have this other option right here, which personally I think it was absolutely insane when I first discovered this. It is a full skip ticket option in which you will then immediately skip the entire journey and the AI will just do everything for you in less than 10 seconds. After selecting the desired stats, so for example, if I want to give my Tanya max attack as well as a little bit of like, let's say, accuracy, this is going to be prioritizing your friendship training, which is the rainbow training, and this is going to be prioritizing your commissions, your jobs, which will give you more gold. Once you have this set up, the game will basically just play it and give you a final career or rather journey result, which you can then equip to your units. Now, unfortunately, for this particular function, it is highly recommended to not use it for your ace runs, but rather for your parents or spark farming, just like Uma Musume, since those parent stats will not be factored into your final unit. Now, the manual play will always get you the best results, assuming you know what you're doing. So ideally, you do just try to squeeze out the best runs for yourself if you're going to be taking them to more challenging endgame content. And also in the early game, I would still view myself relatively new, especially for players that have been playing since day one. The likelihood of success on the harder journey, the 750 points journey, is actually really low because your units and resonance as of this point is not high enough yet. But I would imagine as you reach into the late game with a level 160 resonance, 180, where you have a resonance like 8, 9, or 10, then this option for farming should ideally not be failing by the time you're going to be progressing over them, right? So with all that being established, this is going to be the process for the actual journey. Within Star Savior, you only have 1 year, but between each month, it's split into 3 different segments. So the early, middle, and the later portion of the month, unlike Uma Musume, which is like 2 portions for 1 month, right? So there's the same things as like Uma Musume, where you have like your different races, or in this case, it's going to be combat, to pass the trials, to pass the exams, before you can proceed into the next stage, right? So there are exams, there are commission, rest, and the new thing is pretty much going to be the addition of gold, which is earned by your commission or some other events, which can then use to buy shop items to improve your actual capabilities within the journey itself. So it's either going to be like more potential points, it's either going to be like more equipments, or it's going to be like more stats, whichever it's going to be. And on top of that, you have the other things like your friendship training, your rainbow training, or the different events that will give you different buffs. Sometimes there are like RNG that are like your mood downs, right? Your mood goes down, you lose your energy in there. So if you have played Uma Musume, this is pretty much the exact same. Again, I will post a full journey guide for Star Savior in the future, but this will just be the general gist of the process you are going to be experiencing for yourself if you like this kind of content. So with these 3 established, so your classic farming portion, your AFK farming portion, as well as your career farming portion, that is when you can finally take a look into the actual units itself that Star Savior has to offer. So for each unit in Star Savior, they are basically split into 5 of these different categories, as well as the number 6 over here, which is gonna be the limit break system. So the first line over here, it is gonna be, if you have played like HSR or the Epic 7, it is the exact same line. So this is gonna be attack, HP, defense, speed, crit rate, crit damage, effect accuracy, as well as effect resistance. All of these stats, they will be differing between different units. So your tanks want more HP, your DPS wants more attack or more crit rate, crit damage. But generally speaking, most units will definitely want speed in their kit, because this game's speed priority is going to be very important, especially when you're going to be playing the more difficult bosses, which can actually lap you over time, right? So these are going to be the stats. And then for the level, it is going to be the exact same as Nikkei. So every 10 levels, you have to use this special currency. So this is like the stars glitter or something. And then you can take it into the next level, which you can then use to combine into the synchronization system, the exact same as Nikkei, which I'll be talking a little bit towards the end, right? So this is going to be the level portion, and then this is the resonance portion, right? If you play Warning Race, it is the exact same race, Resonance Gongming. For this thing, it doesn't really change too much because it just unlocks you a couple of additional, like very small minor amounts of stats over here. So you get like some base attack, base HP, couple of speed, defense, but the more important thing is that they actually make your journey stronger, right? So the higher these resonance have, you unlock more of these stats that you will then have towards your journey. So if you are going to be playing the early game, if your resonance only going to be like 3, 4, 5, your journey will be a lot more difficult to get the ideal stats, which will then make your final save file lower quality. But eventually, when you get all the way to the resonance 10, when you unlock all these different abilities, as well as like all these, like for example, this is going to be a speed upgrade, then you can see the quality of your units will also go up correspondingly, because you can get a better save file during your journey, right? So these are gonna be the resonance. Other than that, we can just move on into the next portion. This is gonna be the skills, right? So you are split into 1 unique skill. This is usually gonna be a passive, 1 basic, 1 special skill, and then this is gonna be your ultimate. For this skill level up is very similar to not HSR, but once again Epic 7, where some units, they unlock a very, very important mechanic, which is -1 turn cooldown. So for example, for Lacey over here, we unlock the -1 turn cooldown for level 6. But a lot of these other different upgrades are very minor. So these are usually like +1% damage or like +1% healing, 1% HP, etc. There are a couple of different effects. Like for example, level 4 gives you additional rate to apply your debuff, and then at level 8, it gives you another 15% base accuracy to apply your debuffs, right? So differing between the units, they will unlock their priorities. So for Lazy, let's just say her skill, she doesn't really have anything that says -1 cooldown. It's only going to be raw damage. So technically speaking, in terms of priority, she's not going to be as important. For example, let's say Omega over here. Omega has the level 6 unlocks -1 turn cooldown for both her skill as well as the ultimate, which will then make her rotation a lot faster. This is why for leveling your skills in Star Savior, if you have played Epic 7, ideally, you never really take them to a very high level. This is going to be one of the flaws in the game, in which the skill economy, right, these are materials here, which you can see, they are very, very scarce, because you can only go into the Q palace once a day. And other than events, as well as the devs giving them like free cubes, this will be the biggest bottleneck in the game, very similar to Epic 7 early days with the Mola Gora situation. So you don't really want to take them beyond level 3, because level 3 is the final spot where you can only just use this material before you have to use your cubes, right? So most units you can just leave them at level 3. Some of them you don't really even need any higher level than like level 1. So for example, if you're just going to be running like a tank, most of the time your bases will never have ending because it's just going to be base multipliers. And then sometimes you want to get yourself a higher investment. For example, this tank not only has the additional damage, it also has the trigger probability of getting your taunt. Then maybe you want to prioritize the level 6 a little bit more, right? So each different units, their skills will be depending based on what you're actually going to be using. But just know that for this portion, I want to talk about it over here, you can reset all materials just like Nikkei for 10 of the premium currency, but you only get back your gold, books, as well as the star glitter. You will not get back any materials based on your resonance as well as your skill, right? And out of this game, I would say that the skill materials are going to be one of the biggest bottlenecks. So before you think that you can actually reset, you do not want to ideally do that, especially for unit skill, right? Ideally, you leave most of the units at level 3 and then you just kind of go on from there. Other than that, then this is going to be the save file which I talked about in the journey just now. So I'm not going to be explaining this, more in-depth guide coming forward in the future. And then this is going to be the game's relic system. So for Star Savior's relic system, it is almost exactly the same as once again Epic 7, where you can run the 4-piece, 2-piece, or a couple of 2+2 pieces. But for Star Savior, relics are actually a lot more manageable in RNG, because instead of a 3 flat stats with 3 RNG main stats, you have 3 fixed main stats for 4 pieces of gears, and there is fixed attack for your gloves, fixed HP for your gauntlets, fixed defense for your, I'm guessing this is going to be the chest piece, and fixed speed for your boots. So every single boots in this game is always going to be a speed main stat, which means that the only 2 RNG mains that you actually need to farm is basically your necklace, which can roll speed, attack, crit rate, crit damage, but mostly almost every single unit you're going to be talking about either speed, crit rate, or crit damage. All the other mains is not going to be as important, so that's your necklace. And another one is going to be a ring, which is your attack, HP, defense, flat attack, HP, defense, as well as effect accuracy and effect resistance, right? So other than these 2 main sets, I would say that generally speaking, the relic RNG grind for Star Savior is not going to be as tedious as compared to, let's just say, HSR or even like Epic 7, where you have a lot of different RNG main stats with your RNG subsets. And then when you want to upgrade a gear, it is the exact same system as like your E7 and HSR, where every 3 levels, you unlock a random RNG to go into one of the subsets over here. So for example, this ring is like speed, crit rate, crit damage, as well as effect accuracy, which honestly is a perfect piece for Lacey. But talking about the relic upgrades, you don't really want to upgrade them now, because this is, you can see over here, a tier 1 gear. Eventually, when I proceed more into the story, I haven't unlocked it for myself, you'll be unlocking the tier 2 gear, which is the actual endgame gear for Star Savior. So in the early game, you kind of just want to leave them at roughly level 6, maybe level 9 if they're really, really good. Other than that, you can just kind of move on from that, right? And then the last tab over here is going to be the affection system, so you can see from all of these Gacha games. And at level 10, you unlock a special cutscene. So for example, this is going to be Lacey's special cutscene, which editor, if we need to like, you know, censor this, just censor this. Yep, so different units will unlock their different cutscenes depending on what they are. And you can kind of interact with them a little bit here and there. They can move a little bit around. So just a little bit of fan service. I would want to say some units are level cutscenes at level 10 is going to be special. So for example, the current anniversary rate up unit. Okay, not really anniversary, but the anniversary gala main character. Her level 10 scene is actually full 3D instead of just L2D. Because first of all, she is like one of the most broken units in the game, but because of some of these units, you might expect to see more of them coming on global, where you can like actually interact way more. So for this particular one, it's a little bit similar to like Girls Frontline 2, where there are like way more fan service for some units compared to other units, right? So this is just gonna be for your considerations. But aside from the fan service, you also definitely unlock like base stats, right? Your attack, HP, and defense is gonna be improved, as well as unlocking some special voice lines, which you can also add to your collection, right? So those are gonna be the correct developments within Star Savior. And then one last thing which I'm going to be talking about with the synchronization, and that is going to be the Star Savior limit break system. So just like Nikkei, Star Savior's limit break is non-negotiable. You have to limit break your SSRs because there is a level cap of 160 at 0 dupes, 180 at 1 dupe, 200 at 2 dupes, and then once you unlock 3 star and above, that is when you can take your units to a higher level from this thingy right here. So On top of the limit break system, every single one of these units you can just kind of add on to your team. And then if you were to add a unit, for example, that I were to add this like Dark Healer, then she will be instantly level 109, letting me use her pretty much immediately. I'll farm her journey, farm her relics, farm her everything, get a little bit of skill, and she's gonna be good to go, right? So exactly like Nikkei, and I would say that this is also gonna be tying a little bit more towards the gacha I'll explain later. But aside from the limit breaking for the levels, upgrading your units' dupes will also unlock their unique capabilities, right? So some of them, you can see over here, they have very strong level upgrades to their uniques, which is only going to be unlocked from your dupes. So, for example, Lazy's personal dupes actually doesn't change her abilities by that much. It is only going to be increasing her attack, as well as a little bit more action value advance after getting hit by enemies with the debuff. But some units have really good uniques. So, for example, if you're able to unlock a, let's just say, our current radar unit, this at level 1, it does nothing. It only gives you a plus 5% max HP. But if you unlock this at level 2, you will unlock a whole other mechanic where she launch a follow-up attack, as well as triggering toughness bar damage on top of healing. So these units are where like dupes matter a lot. So ideally, for example, like this anniversary unit, you really want to try to get at least one copy. This is gonna be at 50% trigger rate at every single stack. So at level 4, it is gonna be 100% triggering their follow-up attack, right? So depending on different units, they will have dupes that will matter a lot more than others, aside from just unlocking their special potential for the levels. So for the limit break portion, you can see from this little chart over here, the first stage, it will increase your maximum affinity level from level 30 to level 40. But on top of that, it also upgrades your unique skills from level 1 and level 2. And then for stage 2, which is going to be your 2 stars, it's going to take your first limit break from level 160 to 180. And your final 3rd star is going to be from 180 to 200, right? So it's going to be from 0 stars all the way up to 3 stars. For any limit break at 3 stars, you actually unlock a special illustration. You can see from the home screen. Most of them are, you know, if you like this kind of stuff, then you can kind of just take a look at yourself. And then for any other dupes after the first 3 limit break, so from 3 star onwards, you actually get this imprint, which will then raise up your attack, HP, and defense by 2%, up to 14% over 7 levels. So it is the exact same as Nikkei. This doesn't really affect your actual level of the unit itself, which is going to be 200, but every single one of these is just going to be some passive stats, which I would say doesn't really change anything, or rather that much, as compared to the first 3 limit breaks, which will actually improve your actual skills on top of the max levels. So now that we have discussed the dupe system, I can then finally get into essentially one of the pain points and questions that a lot of you guys might have. What is Star Savior's gacha system? So first of all, you can just try to check out all of these footages that I've compiled through the past couple of days playing. It has a base rate of 4% for all of your SSRs, right? Which means that getting multiple copies of SR, getting a double or even a triple in Star Savior for even your support cards or different units or radar banners or standard banners, it is not going to be uncommon, because the base rates for this game are just that high. So generally speaking, the core concept is almost the exact same as Uma Musume and Nikkei, but a little bit different, where they basically combine the odds of Nikkei into the gacha banner as Uma Musume, but they made it more friendly because they have this spark system, which is the exact same as Uma Musume. You can redeem a copy of either a unit or a support card at 200 points. So this currency is going to be shared, and the best part is it does not go away. So unlike Uma Musume, where after 200 pulls, if you don't get 200 pulls, all of those sparks will be wasted, you can actually bring this spark towards the next banner. So this is also not a feature that was available in Stellar Sora, because in Stellar Sora, this will also go away when the banner goes away. But for Star Savior, it actually carries forward between every single, like, the same banner type. So for example, previously we had the Omega banner. It was not even a LD unit, because Omega was a green unit, right? Now that we are currently having the LD rate up, the banner currency still carried forward into this banner. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as you are gonna keep pulling and do not spend these points, you can kind of just save up for the rate up LD unit, because the unfortunate thing for this is that LD units are gonna be at 1% rates, whereas the RGB units are gonna be at 2% rate. So for an LD banner, despite having 4% SSR, it is actually 25-75 instead of 50-50. So take this as you will, just like Uma Musume, where if you are going to be pulling this like a lot of times, just be prepared that there's no such thing as a hard PD. The only real hard PD is exchanging your points for one copy of that unit. So theoretically speaking, despite having 4% SSR rates, I've been getting a SSR almost every 20-30 pulls, so it's very frequent, but there is no guarantee that you can actually land the pickup unit yourself. So even if you get like 10 different SSRs, but every single SSR just refuses to be the rate up unit, then it's kind of just a warm-up situation, right? So it can be think of like the gacha gives you a lot of different SSRs for both the LD as well as the RGB units, but there's no guarantee that you can actually get this every single time, except if you want to exchange them from the PD shop over here. So talking about this, you probably will also be wondering, how many pulls does this game actually give you, right? So as of this time of recording, as a complete free play, I have done 158 summons. So this is going to be the exact same banner. So for both the support card as well as the rate up unit, I have done 158 summons as well as 442 summons, because I actually use this to redeem one copy of the standard unit to improve my Tanya, right? So also I redeem one of these copies over here. This units over here will change every single day, so you will then be using these tokens to get yourself the limit break tree, which is why I would say it's very achievable to hit the max limit break in Star Savior, right? So aside from that, I have pretty much done combined total. So this is going to be 158 into 442, so exactly 600 summons as a complete free to play. I have not spent a single cent in this game. The game, just as of this time of recording, I've been playing this for 1 week. It gives you so many summons. It is almost impossible to just not get at least a decent amount of SSR to your roster. So you can all these SSR are completely just from both the standard pool as well as the limited pool, and I think I probably have more than 20 SSRs at this point. And then this is going to be the support cards, which unfortunately I didn't pull that much, but I also have myself a full set of at least 5 different SSR support cards, which you'll then be using for your journey. So my bottom line for this gacha is pretty much this. It is basically the same as Uma Musume with Nikkei rates, but you can be extremely unlucky in a sense where you get a lot of different SSRs, but you can also be extremely unlucky because despite having 4%, there's no guarantee that you are definitely going to be getting this unit within like 100 pulls, 120 pulls, so on and so forth, except for the Spark system, which is like this game's guarantee. So basically 200 pulls for a single copy of this rate up unit, right? So that is how this gacha system is going to be like. So I would say that as of this point, the gacha system is going to be very different from the Hoyo model, where you pull individual units, then maybe get a E1 as ones. For Star Savior, dupes are much more tied to Nikkei, where it is basically a requirement to clear the end game because you want to go past level 200. So you are going to be getting showered with so many SSRs. You will still want to have dupes for these units to progress in the long run, because the zero limit break unit will always be kind of stuck at 160 without a synthesizer. So if you want to compare this to Uma Musume, Uma Musume is the opposite, where you don't really care about dupes in the units, but you really want like MLB support cards. So you want to get, let's say, MLB Kira-san Black, MLB Super Creep, which will unlock a lot of capabilities. Star Savior support cards actually don't really care about the dupes at all. So this is a very similar to, let's just say, HSR, where a single copy will pretty much unlock the full potential of the unit, and if you want to take them to a higher level, it just upgrades their base stats over here, but you have unlocked the full capabilities of one support card from a single copy. So it is the polar opposite of Uma. You want more units in Star Savior, and you don't really want dupes that much in Star Savior. Now, I will say that one minor thing is that for this exchange system, you can only exchange units. So for example, you can exchange the unit for the rate up, right? You can exchange one copy. You can exchange the support card for the rate up. So for example, one copy. You can exchange the standard unit from this shop that I showed you guys just now, but you cannot exchange a standard Lycon or standard support card. So for specific key support cards that are in SSR, if you cannot get them early, then you kind of just have to pray. You either get them from a selector, from an RNG, or one Vine Day. Which is why if we actually want to reroll in Star Savior, it is pretty recommended to try rerolling for some key support cards, since there are no consistent ways to get these support cards, because I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of SSR selectors to get the units, but the key individual like top tier support cards to make your careers better, it is not going to be available, at least as of this time of recording for the JP and KR server. And now we can kind of just jump into our monetization after talking about the gacha. So from what I'm seeing, you can see I did not buy a single pack. I've done 600 summons on this game, completely free to play. You have a lot of the classic month. This is going to be for the monthly pass for a premium currency. This is going to be a monthly pass with an additional bit of them stamina for your gears as well as your career. Then you have a couple of these like one-time packs, right? You have the limited radar packs, the event packs, and just like Nikkei, after clearing like specific stages, it will also be hit in the face with like these kind of like limited time packs where it will go away like after 2 hours. So I personally have not really felt the need to even spend money on this game that much, which I'll explain a little bit later. But generally speaking, it is not good value to buy raw pools here, because this is gonna be 4800 times 2 at 79.99 USD, but it is with the 4800 bonus. So without the 4800 bonus, you're only gonna be buying 4800 for $80, which I would say it is definitely not gonna be worth it compared to the current major pricing for most gacha games. So if you do want to spend money in Star Savior, I will only recommend, like, for example, the limited time packs. So these packs are actually really good value. So you get like 15 pools plus 1000 for roughly $20. There are a couple of their monthly passes, which is going to be these two over here, as well as the battle pass right here. So for the Star Savior monetized battle pass, there are 5 different battle passes. These 3 are basically for materials. So they are all progressions materials. They will make you progress your units faster. And then this one is going to be for like your gears, right? It gives you a couple of like tier 1 selectors. And then these 2 are only going to be for raw summoning the premium currency, right? So for all these things, they turn out to be relatively okay. So this is going to be for $6. And then this is going to be for $6. And then this is going to be for $11 or $19 for the deluxe version. And then for one copy of this is going to be $20 for roughly 7,000 of the premium currency, right? So all those other monetization, I didn't really dive into this that deeply because, you know, I mentioned I'm free to play, but we'll probably explore this more when we come out into the global server. Alright, now we are gonna come into the final 7 of Star Savior, and that is gonna be this game's endgame content as well as the PvP aspect. So for the PvE aspect for Star Savior, you have one which is gonna be the Infinite Tower, exactly the same as what you find from, for example, Stella Sora. In Epic 7 is gonna be the Abyss, so you can kind of just try to proceed this as high as you can. At certain point, you just keep going, and if you cannot clear anymore, then that's kind of pretty much it. And then all these are the 3 different RGB towers with like a fire, water, as well as green. Every single one of these towers, it opens once per day, and I think the weekends they open up like every single tower. Only 3 attempts per tower, so you cannot push this as high as you can. So every single day it gives you 3 attempts to try to push there. But very straightforward in this regard. The other more interesting PvE endgame is gonna be this right here, which is gonna be locked. It's not available right now. It is gonna be called the Cosmic Gate. So the Cosmic Gate, as of right now, this game mode still in the official server, it is still known as a beta. So we are going to be getting one more version of this Cosmic Gate under the beta, and they will then finalize the actual Cosmic Gate around mid-January based on the developer's notes that you can see over here. So for Cosmic Gate, it is literally just a Memory of Chaos. It is a rotational mode, and once it ends, it goes away, so it's not permanent. It is a 2x4 main content, but the annoying thing as of this current first beta is that if you reset your teams, it costs you 5,000 gold per reset, which is absolutely just ridiculous. So I really hope they remove that from the global. And yes, gold as well as a lot of these resources, I'll talk about it in the bad things later on, it will become very tight by mid-game, especially level 90 or 100. And if you're going to be raising up a lot of different support cards. The mechanics between Cosmic Gate, it is where different bosses will have different mechanics to encourage different teams. So for example, a certain boss will want debuffs, you want to be on the right element, or a certain boss will want buffs, multi-hits, hitting for like very frequently, all that kind of stuff. So all these are going to be the rotational endgame content just for the PvE aspect. I can't really talk about it because I haven't really experienced it for myself, but going forward in the future, I'll let you guys know how it's going to be. And that is kind of pretty much it. So there's not a lot of things to actually do here aside from these 2 in PvE. So the rest of the PvP is gonna be where I would say majority of this grind phase is gonna be. So you have the normal arena, so this is gonna be the same as your Epic 7 arena, or if you play Counter-Strike, it's the exact same, or this is gonna be for your real-time RTA right here, right? So for any of these kind of like turn-based PvP, speed is always going to be classic, so I don't really think I need to talk about it that much. So if you do get a break, unlike for the actual normal game, where if you break the enemy boss, you will go all the way down to 100% action value delay. If you get broken in RTA, or you break the enemy, it is only going to be a small delay and gives you +1 charge for the Guardian. You can see on the right corner over here. This is actually a very chill game mode because there aren't really any big rewards tied to climbing in the RTA, as you can see over here, because they are seasonal rewards, only refresh on a 2-month basis, right? This season currently lasts from the 17th of November to the 18th of January on 2026. So for every 2 months, you get from the very highest rank, you get roughly slightly under a 10 pool, because a single 10 pool is 2,000 of the premium currency. So where I'm at right now, I'm basically only at gold. I will only get 400 after 2 months. So the difference honestly is very, very low, especially over a 2-month period, because there aren't any weeklies. So you can either try for fun or you can just leave it. But I would do the 8 RTA as well as the PP just so that I can go ahead and use these shop tokens to buy yourself these cubes just for skill ups, especially your golden cubes, purple cubes, as well as the green cubes over here. This is just gonna be for clearing your currency right there. Meta-wise in PvP, frankly, it doesn't really matter because you either completely get level gap as a day 1 player where there's no chance of winning, or you can farm those that are lower level than you. But out of all of these one-sided fights, you do get some occasional close calls when you can actually fight someone equal to roughly the same level as you, and it's those matches that makes it feel a lot more satisfying because you actually are on equal footing and you have to think which units can you use against which targets over here. For the top end of RTA, it tends to lean more towards standard than cleave because you can't really one-shot units that easily in PvP, assuming the same level of investment, because a lot of like support and sustains, they have like revives and everything, so it is a very, very standard format similar to, let's just say, Epic 7 over there. So with that, I'm just going to be coming to my final thoughts of Star Savior playing this game for at this point 1 week. I'll still be continuing to maintain my JP account every single day until this game actually does come on global. I'll be playing this game, sponsor or not, I'll definitely be playing this game because I am really, really interested, right? So for the pros of Star Savior, for a game with this many elements combined into one, I expect it to take a lot more time for dailies, but it is unironically really time efficient. So the gacha is extremely friendly, at least for my experience with 4% rates. PD carry forward inclusive of LD banners, as well as a lot of pulls, at least from my first week of playing this game. It has very, very nice graphics, fan service, music expression, and I just generally am a fan of this turn-based combat. It is pretty easy to learn, but I can see a lot of potential to min-max with different teams once the meta is more established, and even more so because in current JP, the meta is basically just almost like 1 month old, so there are not a lot of experimentations to see what's going to be going on over there, right? But for the cons of Star Savior, I would say that the progression material is very, very little. You will feel the pinch everywhere at around where I'm at right now in day 5. Once you clear most of the things you need to do, right, you will need to get the star glitter, you will want gold, you will want like the currency for your support cards, and especially for support cards because they are really, really expensive to raise. And I really wish that they have a reset option for the support cards just like the units. But if you were to pour in too much resources in, for example, SRs, it is just going to be wasted because like SSRs will be the end all be all for most of the journeys, right? So very, very tight on the resources. And aside from the support cards that I mentioned just now, the skill level of materials for this game is also very, very low, right? You can only level units to level 3 before using the cubes, and if you want to take them to level 6, I think it takes you like, I don't know, anywhere between like 1 week to actually fully max out a unit. So most units that are going to be playing will never ever see that amount of investments, and especially considering that we're going to be using a Nikkei system where you have a multi-team comms, different synchronizers, different units you want to use at the same time. It can be very, very frustrating because despite making them the same levels, right, you can use a synchronizer, it doesn't synchronize the skill levels, nor does it synchronize their resonance levels for the journey. So it means that you still have to invest these skill materials to make them more viable, and if you don't, you will still feel extremely uncomfortable despite them being the same level as you. So even though we have the synchronizer actually doesn't really do too much because for the units they're going to be using, it is still going to be those select few that you actually invested your save files, your resonance, as well as skill levels. So I think at this point, it legitimately just doesn't make sense, where it's trying to promote me using multiple units, but the skill as well as the progression it takes to make multiple units is not there. So I hope that they improve on this economy. And as of right now, and my last point is pretty much, as of right now, some of the units in Star Savior just feels exceedingly broken. For example, Lacey as well as the current Gala Sarah, they are overwhelmingly powerful to the point where like there are like no purpose to a lot of these other units because it just feels so one-dimensional, right? So for example, Lacey, as of right now, she completely invalidates the entire defender class, and Asira is a sustained support DPS all-in-one, especially with the dupes. So I can see how this meta health is going to be very one-sided, so I hope that in the future, they can actually balance out the units all the time, which thankfully, the devs already mentioned, they are going to be buffing, for example, the defender class, they are going to make other units more viable, buffing, and they have already buffed like the previous batch of units, like making their cooldown shorter, increase their damage and whatever. So by the time this game comes on global, hopefully all the units will have already received the necessary buffs and adjustments, and even as time go on, we can see like a less one-sided team comp where you either get Lacey or you just kind of like suffer a lot more when it comes to your career progression in Star Savior, right? So with that, I think this is probably one of like my longest and most in-depth review I've done for any gacha game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below if you're going to be trying this, because global pre-registration is already going to be up if you want to try to see it for yourselves. I don't really know why it's only for mobile, and it's not for PC, which is a little bit strange because I'm playing on the Steam PC right now. But in any case, I will be cooking up more guides, more progression, especially like I mentioned in my other channel for Pokecore. So I will be seeing you guys there in the future. Word of the day is gonna be holy overworking, join Twitch, join YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Boom, bye.